Thanks for having me.
So first of all, Greg, can you briefly explain the purpose of last week's congressional hearing on USAID funding?
Sure. The DOGE Committee, or Delivering on Government Efficiency, has been peeling back the onion as it relates to many different instances of fraud, waste, and abuse in U.S. budgetary spending. The specific item from last week was focusing on where that fraud led to national security implications for the U.S. government and for its allies like Israel.
And the data you presented to the Congress about the massive aid during the war to Gaza, or rather to Hamas, is shocking. Can you share with us this data?
Sure, 100%. There's really two parts to it. There's money that went to Hamas-affiliated organizations into areas under Hamas control after October 7th. But there's also a second set of data that goes back 15 years to the Obama administration with USAID and other elements of the State Department and the U.S. government funding radical organizations, and over $122 million to organizations that have direct ties to terror organizations like Hamas, but also Hezbollah, Al-Qaida, Taiba, and other organizations which are present on the U.S.'s designated terror organizations list.
So, in fact, U.S. taxpayers' money has funded terrorists of Al-Qaida, Somalia, and Gaza against Israel.
Against Israel and against the United States. It would be like the U.S. government during World War II subsidizing Nazi Germany with the Marshall Plan before Hitler fell. It's unconscionable, and it's something that has to be dealt with immediately, which is why the hearing was held.
So how did you and your team at the Middle East Forum uncover this information? Because we know that for a long time you tried to obtain this information, but were blocked.
Right. We tried to file Freedom of Information Act requests with the U.S. government. And in one instance, we're still being delayed, even though the Trump administration has promised to give us that information as soon as possible. More than anything, we've had 6 lawsuits that we filed against the U.S. government trying to get this information. And gradually, month after month, year after year, we were able to peel that information back. But even in my own experience as a former non-commissioned officer and the coordinator of government activities in the territories when I served in the Israeli army in the Ministry of Defense, in Hebrew, the Matpash Misrad HaBitachon, we had the same issue from the Israeli side, seeking answers from administrations that were subsidizing terror-linked groups, not wanting to tell why, and using political pressure to try to force their allies to allow the monies to go through.
So I know, Greg, that we were shocked by this information. How have the lawmakers, the congressmen at the hearing responded to your testimony?
It has caused members of the administration on the executive side and also members of Congress to seek immediate action, not just to stop this kind of funding, but also to hold those responsible in civil actions and perhaps even through criminal indictments. We also see an instance where the organizations which receive this money should be placed on a do not support list, especially if they have connections to terror groups. It's what's called secondary sanctions in U.S. sanctions terminology.
And I will say a change in the new administration.
Yes, and I think that they're trying to codify it into U.S. law, so it's not just an administrative action, something that becomes permanent.
And permanent for good. Gregg Roman, Executive Director of the Middle East Forum, thank you for your work and thank you for this interview.
Thank you very much. Toda Rabba.
Toda.